I was born on Bruny Island in Barnes Bay, and Dad was a scallop fisherman and cooter fisherman. And all of us used to take 3 months off school every year to split the scallops, so our education was pretty well interrupted. And my sister, the whole lot of us used to go scallop splitting. And it was all done out of Barnes Bay. There was just the 3 or 4 boats that worked out of there. There was only 3 or 4 people living in Barnes Bay, the Wisbys. And the Whaymans were the only ones that were scalloping out. Then the Davises, a couple of the Davis boys. And then he decided, when we was about 12 or 13, to shift to Woodbridge. And we wanted to go to Kettering, but he had a friend at Woodbridge, one of the Lynch's, Maury Lynch's grandfather, Maury Wolf's grandfather, and so we shifted down to Woodbridge and started scalloping from there.
Just tell us about a day's scalloping, if you could.
Well, the day's scalloping was you got up well before daylight, and down virtually on the drag as soon as you could possibly get there. They weren't very big boats those days; they were fairly small boats, so they were very limited with the amount of fishing you could do. So they used to, every fine day, they'd work as long as they could. Usually around about 30 bags a day. They'd average about 30 bags a day. And they actually depended upon that for most of the year. That was, we used to have to go to work and dig around apple trees while they sat and talked about their scalloping days. I think it wasn't a very good job. It was pretty hard work, bending over all day. We were very backward with our methods those days.
Can you just explain the methods?
Well, the methods they were originally started with rope gear, and you hauled them by hand. You didn't have any winches or anything like that. Then they went to a dolly type of winch, a double dolly on either side, and they had dollies on either side, and they'd pull it that way. Then they eventually changed to wire gear, and then they suddenly decided that they was going to do what we've all done and get greedy, and they went to put the Sputniks there for 2 years, and it's taken them, they're back as thick as anything under our marine farms nowadays. Very, very thick. And now they're letting the starfish eat them instead of taking. So that's history of the scallops in the channel has been very, very poor as far as we're concerned, management-wise, extremely badly managed.
Well, how did you come to start cray-fishing? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I met Ralphie Leary. There was a little boat called the Cura Bay in Kettering. An old fellow had it, and he said to me, "Would you like to go cray-fishing?" And at that stage, I knocked off at 17 years of age. My father got sick, and I had to take the safety, the boat we had scalloping. And it was my mates, one was 15, the other one was 16, and I was 17. So I became a skipper at 17 years of age. I put my age up to 18 so as I could get it. Greatest mistake I ever made in my life, I think. And then at 18 and 19 years of age, I had to do national service, so I took some time off from there. But I was probably one of the youngest skippers around those days. But you grew up very quick because we had wonderful people like Scotchy McDougall and all those fellows to knock around with, and you had to compete with them though. You had to get as many bags as they did. We were reasonably good at it. And my sister even had to come that year when Dad got sick, so she was the first woman I ever knew went scalloping on a boat. And then I met Ralphie Leary at a meeting, and he said to me, "Come down to research, get some pots and come down to research." So I decided that's what I would go and do. I went down there in the Cura Bay, a little teeny. She was built from the timber off the boat that went between the two Acteons, they called it. She was wrecked, and all the timber was picked up off New Bena, and they built her out of it, hardwood. And I worked her on my own for a little while, and I'll never forget when I went down there, I didn't know where I was, didn't know a first thing about it. And away comes this boat out to me, and he said, "Have you ever been down here, mate?" I said, "No, never been here before." He said, "Just follow around, just work outside of me." He said, "I'll probably get a load a bit quicker than you will." He said, but you'll be right. He said, you won't hit any rocks that way. And that was Ralphie Leary, and he done that to everybody. He's a bit like George McQueen and Rupert Din and those fellas round. We went round to Port Davey. He looked after the research boys, and they looked after Port Davey, the new chums from Port Davey. So he was a man and a half, Ralphie.
So
Took me 2 days to actually get a load of fish, 30 score. So, and that was no night shots, just day shots. I got every one of them from round the bight of the Actine, the little bight of the Actine Islands there. That was how, and got 16 dozen stripy trumpeter, and had to cut them all up for bait. So times have changed, haven't they?
yeah, so when did you first get around the south coast, or get around further?
I went round the Memory on my own, round to Cox's Bight, and Whayman the German was round there in the McFlare, and he showed me around there. So I can't credit myself with showing anyone else around for a start off it. But I got a load in 2 days there, came home. And then I progressed from the Memory into the Nairee, and we done very well with her. She was possibly one of the best scallop boats there was around as well. She was an old barge, ex-barge. Well, she wasn't built for a barge, she was built for Toby Cheverton in Sandy Bay. He was a builder or something. And then Jeff Blundell had the Truganini built, and I've got a photo of her going into the water. I towed her into the water when she was first built by Wilson's. And then Jeff Blundell said, would you like to buy her? I said, yeah, I don't think I can afford her. He said, oh yeah, I think you can. It was $20,000 those days. She was $20,000.
So you told me once about you went around there and Clyde come up and fired a shot over you or something. What's that?
That would have to be one of the worst experiences I've ever had in my life, because we were new around there, we were pretty nervous about everything. We're sitting down having breakfast, and off goes this 12 gauge, straight over the top of the cabin. And when I got up, he wouldn't be from here to the other end of the room, away from us, with a smoking shotgun in his hand. He said, hello, I'm Clyde Clayton. This is my dog Puppy. This is my wife Wynne. And he said, just come to say good day, let them know where we were. He said, don't forget to come into Port Davey when you come in there. I said, oh, that'll be the flaming day, the last place I'll ever go. But we got to know him. Rupert told us, Rupert Din said to us, just don't take any notice of that. He said, that's Clyde, that's his sense of humour. So that was my first meeting with Clyde, and from then on, I used to go ashore and play the piano for her. I could play music, and she loved the piano and used to play for her. We'd go ashore there every time, chance we got. Boys, my sons as well, later on.
Used to be a few parties there, was there?
Pardon?
Used to be a few parties?
No, never drank. There was never any alcohol ever aboard any of the boats. Never. I can't remember seeing. I've never seen a glass of beer in any of the George McQueen's, Rupert's, or anyone else's, and we didn't do it for that reason ourselves. I think that's what they learned us the right way.
What about Herbie Hall?
Different size, different era. Completely different era. That was, and Herbie never drank, believe it or not, until the other younger people came round there. And Herbie you'd never see Herbie drinking at all on the boat when he first started there.
What other things did you get up to in Port Davey?
We used to make all the pots. Clyde used to make pots, and Rupert. They made a different pot. Clyde made one a bit heavier, because sometimes he'd work off the deck. And Rupert's pots were, quite light and made out of the tea tree they'd get up the Davey River there, I think it was. But that was great. That was a real party. I mean, they wouldn't have any beer or anything like that, but everyone learned how to make pots. That was a big advantage. I came home and started to make my own pots and never bought a potter afterwards, until later in life. And so they learnt us a hell of a lot, those blokes. But the one thing you never did, you never questioned whether they were right or wrong, because you would never get told anything again. Arthur Wren had decided that he wanted to come round the coast fishing, so because I'd been shown around, I thought the right thing to do was look after him as good as I could. And Bob Pittman and all the other people were there as well. There was a great heap of us there. We went out fishing west of Maritime Lighthouse. Was out fishing there and got a nice couple of nice days fishing.
In November 1963, Des Whayman, in the 50-foot Maritime, found himself sheltering from a gale in the lee of Matsika Island, in company with the 42-foot Lee Ann, Arthur Renard, master.
We're laying under Matsika, where you lay at the gap there at Matsika, and all through the night the wind came through. And I've never seen a sea or a wind build like it. It was quick. We decided to leave, and when we got out there, we weren't having such a hell of a lot of trouble. It wasn't much water, no water coming aboard, just an odd one breaking, but they were the longest swells I'd ever seen. And they gave 12 metre swell at Matsika and forced 12. Anyway, we left and we got out, and I toddling along, and a young bloke said, "Look at this big sea," to me. I looked behind, and there was the Leanne skidding down the sea. I reckon she was doing 40 odd knots as she came down that sea.
I'm not sure whether it was him or me, whichever one it was, said, "Look at this bastard coming." And it was honestly, it was just one big wall of water. But when I can remember it hitting, that's all. But I think the boat was in the trough. I think the Leanne was down in the trough, and this freak wave sort of come and hit it. Well, it had no chance, well, in my opinion, it rolled straight over.
Dipped her head under and turned over and went out of sight with the gardener.
Well, if the wheelhouse door had been on the weathered side as we rolled, we would have been still in the wheelhouse today. But as the boat rolled and the wheelhouse door was open, and it was on the weathered side, on the sheltered side, well, it threw me straight out through the door, and I bumped my head on something. I don't know what it was, and split my head open. But next thing, I was just in a mass of water. It'd be dark all of a sudden, and then it'd come light. Well, that'd be the wave breaking over you, and then, you know, you'd take a sort of, well, I must have took a good breath to last a few seconds. And I remember being in the water, and I'd bought a new Holden car, and there's three things that crossed my mind, and that I still remember it today. I thought, am I going to drive my new car? Will I ever have another beer, or will I see my parents again? That's exactly what happened.
And as I went round, Barry popped up alongside of me, Barry Bosworth, and I couldn't say, "I'm going over to get him, I'm going to leave you here." So we grabbed him, and by the time we got to that car, and I declare that we wouldn't have been 3 minutes doing a lot of it.
They pulled me aboard, and I just lay there, and I don't know how many gallons of water I brought up, but when I don't know how many minutes, I thought it was a day that I was in the water.
Went straight over to Arthur. He was there, and we thought, oh, he's still alive. He was laying on his back. And I went underneath. Everyone tells you how to pick people up at sea, but I do know how to pick them up there, unfortunately, after that. We went in underneath him, stopped, and he washed down the wave, and as he came down, the boat went under, and he came aboard. That's what we done. We didn't go head on, because if you go head on, you'll wash over the top of him. Didn't go stern on, because you chop him to pieces. Went round as close as we possibly could, right as close as we possibly could get to him. And of course, we had hook sticks and all that. We were that close, we could have, and we actually did have to use the hook stick to pull him to us, which, you know, better than we thought, better than. But we got, and then if we'd have known what we know now today, perhaps we would have saved him, because he never drowned. He didn't get any water in him at all. He had a bad car accident and broke his nose, and he could only breathe through his mouth. And the coroner found that he was, the valve in his throat had blocked off. He had 2 teaspoons of water in him. That's all he had anywhere, and that's why he floated as well. But there was gas bottles, there was everything there. He had everything to hang on to, and Barry Bosworth had nothing, because I reckon they were, when they come up, they would have been 50 metres apart at least. One there, one 50 metres away. They didn't come up together. So the boat, but I'll never forget that gardener running upside down as long as I live. It went out of sight with a propeller like that. I still have nightmares about it.
I didn't know that you got the body. I didn't
Oh no, we got the body. And the hardest part of the whole lot of it was to come home to meet his wife. She handled it okay. But I was bawling my eyes out like a kid. I couldn't handle it, you know. The fact that he was my greatest mate, and to have to turn around and say, some of the worst episodes on that west coast from most people's point of view is shifting from the bottom side of Point Ibs when it swings into the southwestern southerly to go round to the top side. But we always knew when to go. Billy Dennis, who I consider was probably one of the best seamen I've ever seen in my life, as soon as he started, you'd hear his chain starting to wind up. We'd all up with our chains. And it looked like a Portuguese navy going out round the point. Everyone would shift. Yes. Billy knew exactly when to shift. I reckon he saved more lives than anyone in this world, because I tell you what, time after time. And Scotchy would say, if I'm not here, don't forget, if Billy shifts, you shift. We'd have to be told to do that, go from one side to the other.
I'll just get you to say that again. I just switched off for a second.
Well, actually, George McQueen was the first one. I don't know how he found out. he told us that you could lay on the bottom side, and if you were quick enough getting out to go round to the top side, it was okay. But he said, as soon as the breeze comes through, get round to the top side. And that was good advice, and that's what we done. So we all lived, really speaking, we lived on the advice mostly until we learnt ourselves on the advice of the old hands that was around there. And they would never ever tell you anything wrong. It was, if you didn't take notice of them, you'd usually pay the penalty. We were fishing in an area south of Margot's Harbour. We finished up calling it Tiger Corner. All our family know it as Tiger Corner now. And my friend, one of the chaps was back on the boat, Merv Smith was back on the boat cooking breakfast, and we were real early in the morning getting our pots, and there was a big sandbank, a big sand dune just there. And there were some birds fluttering around the water, seagulls and things there. And I happened to look ashore, and so did my mate at the same time. And we didn't look at one another for a while. I thought, am I going silly? Down the bank came this tiger, striped, with his tail hitting the sand. He sort of dragged his tail a little bit. My mate said to me, he said, did you see what I saw? I said, I wasn't going to ask you in case you thought I was going silly. He said, that's a Tasmanian tiger. So we did see one. I've seen two in my lifetime, one on top of Mount Arrowsmith, and all my family saw that one. The whole lot of them, the children and my wife. And then Billy Dennis said to me, he said, there's Tasmanian tigers still on this coast. And I said, yeah, I know there is. And we sort of, all of us, kept it quiet. So what we done, just to make sure, we got our mate, and we told him, the one was cooking the breakfast, we said, well, come round here and we'll show you something. He went back, and there was the footmarks of the Tasmanian tiger. And when they do, going up the bank, his tail was hitting the ground. And you can see the mark where his tail hit the ground, and the footmarks, one behind the other. And so we knew we was on the right track. It wasn't And on the way back, we ran into Tas Sward and a bloke called Dr. Geiler. I didn't ring, but we went into the pub at Derwent Bridge on the way back, and they were there. We told them about it. Ah, rubbish, he said. Dr. Geiler said, rubbish, no such thing. Years after, he was still hunting for a Tasmanian tiger. He got a grant or something to go and hunt for Tasmanian tigers. So I think he might have, I don't know whether he was acting the goat with us or not, but there was Tasmanian tigers there at that stage.
What year would that have been, Des?
I was 26, I'm 78, yeah, 78. 26 away from 78.
What year were you born?
1934, yeah.
34 and 26 is 1960.
Yep, 1960. And Billy told us they were there. Billy Dennis told us there. A lot of people used to say Bill would, string people along a bit and tell a few fibs, that sort of thing, but what he didn't. Everything he told me was the truth, so, and that verified it too, because we saw that Tasmanian tiger. No risk in the world. I mean, I'll tell that to anyone. I know we saw a Tasmanian tiger because two of us saw it. Now the bloke went ashore and said, yeah, had a look at the footprints.
What did you like best about cray-fishing?
Best about it?
Yeah, what was the best part of cray-fishing?
Coming home. Hated it. Didn't ever want to be a fisherman. didn't ever want to be a fisherman.
I don't know if I believe you, Desi Whayman.
I think being away from home and the fact that it was so hard on wives, to my way of thinking, it's not a married life at all. That's just what I personally think. I think surely there's better things than leaving to go around there running the risks we did, and we run quite a few. You know, I worked at dinghy all my life, and Rupert and George McQueen and his family and Clyde and them, they all worked dinghies. But Billy Dennis was he revolutionised it. He came around here with a burn gun and he had two 12-foot dinghies, and he worked he was the first one with aluminium dinghies and outboards. And I can remember the load of crays he got in the winter time. He got 100 score of crayfish in the winter time out of the dinghy from Point Hibbs. Never picked his anchor up. So fish were thick those days, and being able to get around in the dinghies, you know, they were very quick and very easy to handle, but very dangerous. And Billy had quite a number of swims for a start off.
You had a swim or two yourself?
Pardon? If you wouldn't believe this, I never ever got a bucket of water in the dinghy, hardly, ever. Not in my lifetime, and I would say that I fished the dinghies area up there, at Point Hibbs area, more than anybody, apart from perhaps Mick Stacey, but I worked dinghies most of my life. Oh, you know, like whenever it was quiet enough to work the dinghies. But very lucky. I've lived a lifetime of luck on the water from my point of view. Can't swim, couldn't swim. And that's probably helped me. I didn't want to get in there. I didn't had no intentions of going in there if I could get out of it, and it probably saved. I mightn't have run as many risks as everyone else.